Alright people, welcome back to another episode of Cross Country Bank Angler. I was kind of just doing some, maintenance on some of my gear, and I was taking the line off of one of my reels, and I thought, maybe I'd make a quick video and just talk about this reel a little bit. I'm referring to this reel right here. This is kind of the primary bait casting reel that you've seen me use in most of my videos if you've been watching some of the others. And this is a kind of a budget type reel, a inexpensive reel. This is a reel from KastKing. This is called the Spartacus II. And I thought, I've been using this reel for a little over a year now, so I figured, after this, after that sort of that field test, I wanted to sort of talk about what I think of this reel and if I recommend it and some of the characteristics of it. This was actually the first year that I started using a bait casting reel, a casting outfit on a regular basis. Before that, I was pretty much just pure spinning. The heaviest rod that I used was a medium spinning, and that's still kind of like one of my go-to rods that I pretty much, I have on a lot of fishing trips and that I take with me wading and stuff like that. And if you're really just getting started, I think a medium spinning or medium light spinning outfit is probably your best option. I want to get into bait casting. I know it's supposed to have some advantages. It takes a little bit of getting used to, takes some practice to get proficient with it, which is something that I've definitely experienced this year. But at this point, a year later, I really come to appreciate the feel of a bait casting setup, and the power that you can have, the accuracy of your cast, better control over your line in general most of the time, as long as you're not having terrible backlashes. So yeah, I really like it, and I've started using that BFS setup too, that lighter casting outfit as well. So I intend to have bait casters in my arsenal from now on, in my lineup of gear that I use. But a little more about this reel specifically. This reel runs about $50, which is pretty darn cheap for a bait casting reel. This is a pretty light reel. I think it weighs about like 6 ounces, and that's lighter than average for a bait caster, a low profile bait caster. I think they tend to run around a little over 7 ounces on average. There are some, this isn't like the lightest reel on the market though. There are some lighter ones. And at this price, I think this is a nylon or carbon fiber frame, so you don't have a metal frame. I know that's a big deal for some of the more hardcore like bass anglers out there. A lot of the pros, they want that higher end stuff because they're going to be fishing all the time and they want as much durability as possible. But for me, I got this reel because I just wanted to try out a bait caster without investing a ton of money. And I did some research on some of the cheaper reels out there, and these KastKing reels, they have overall they seem to have a pretty good reputation, for as terms of value for the price that you're paying. What you get is quite effective. So the speed on this reel, this is a 7:2:1 gear ratio reel, so on the faster side, not super fast, but I knew I wanted something pretty fast. I figured that was kind of going to be, and it would be another advantage to using a casting reel like this. So I made a point to try to get a faster reel. Another interesting thing about this reel is that it actually comes in several different colors, which is kind of unusual, I think, for most fishing reels. But this one, it's kind of this light blue, pretty distinctive. I think they call this color, the company calls it Spin Drift. So kind of a standout color, but you can get this in there's like a dark red color you can get. You can do black, silver, and I think there's also a green version as well, like a kind of a darker green version that came out more recently than the others. So what are some other characteristics of this reel? You know, the tension knob on this reel, you know, this is adjust your spool tension. This is important for kind of when you're setting up your reel. It is worth noting this does not have any kind of clicking. You can see there, you know, no noise when I'm moving it. So I guess that's like not, you know, for me, I didn't think that was a big problem, but it is a feature that some nicer reels might have that this one does not, you know, some more expensive reels. And then, let's see, the braking on this reel, you know, got an externally adjustable magnetic brake on this reel. Once again, pretty common for to have an externally adjustable brake, a magnetic brake on these lower price point reels. And I kind of like that for simplicity, I think, for simplicity's sake. As long as you have a strong enough magnetic system in the reel. And yeah, it's just, you know, simple to adjust. You don't have to worry about opening things up or anything like that, you know, as you would with some of the other types of brakes. So I think the brakes on this reel are pretty good. You know, like I said, this is my first baitcaster, and, you know, starting out with this reel, I was able to, you know, turn up the brake dial to the max here. So that's pretty much the maximum brake you can get this to go to. And, you know, with that set up, you know, and the spool tension, you know, adjusted for a slow fall, I could cast this reel starting off, no backlashes, without using my thumb at all. And I think that's important to be able to kind of have that practice when you're starting out and have a reel that's going to be forgiving enough for you to do that. So overall, this reel, good brakes for a beginner, in my opinion. Now, of course, when you have everything locked down like that, you're not going to get the distance and the accuracy. But when you're just starting out, I think it's important to be able to have that kind of, you know, that option as sort of a crutch to work with, to practice off of. So no complaints there on the magnetic brake. Let's see, other characteristics here. We're coming down to the last few things here. 7+1 ball bearings, you know, more bearings, you know, is going to be smoother. But I think quality of the bearings is also important. Now, I don't have a lot of nicer reels to compare this to. You know, this is the only, you know, the first reel that I used, the first baitcaster I used, and I haven't tried any, you know, more expensive reels, so I don't know how the smoothness compares in some of those nicer reels, but I think this, you know, it feels pretty good retrieving this reel. You know, smooth enough at least, I think, for it to be perfectly functional. So sure, there are probably some nicer, smoother reels out there. In fact, there almost definitely are, but perfectly acceptable. See, the other aspects of this reel, nice sharp thumb bar engagement here. It is kind of like a plasticky thumb bar. I wish this was a little bit nicer sometimes, nicer feeling, because it is just a piece of plastic. There's no padding or anything, but once again, this is a cheap reel, so I'm not going to have some of those fancier bells and whistles, those comfort things. Speaking of comfort here, the handles on this reel, it's I think it's some kind of foam, EVA foam, dense foam here. Overall, these are pretty nice. I overall like them, but you know, it has been a year, and I think I've noticed that these handles, these grips tend to kind of wear down a little bit, get smoother over time. And when you've got, you know, fish slime or wet hands or something, it does get a little easy to slip off of those. But pretty minor complaint there. When I use this reel, you know, it's not something where I don't get any backlashes ever, because first off, I'm not that experienced with bait casting, so gonna make those mistakes. I tend to keep the brakes on this reel nowadays between position 6 and position 4 most of the time, so that's kind of around the midpoint, and it's kind of a good general purpose setting for a lot of different lures I found. If I have a sort of a criticism of the casting of this reel, it does seem to have some trouble with weightless you know, plastics. Like you know, I don't really fish, you know, like the Yum Dingers on this reel, for instance. Same with even like the, Texas rigs with like a lighter weight. I tend to prefer the spinning for those. Now I think maybe with some practice, or if you're a more experienced bait caster, then this won't be a problem. But with some of the lighter, the weightless plastics, that's usually where this reel seems to struggle a little bit. But it depends on the bait that you're using too. So like for instance, I have thrown a fluke on this weightless, and that, I think maybe it's a bit of a denser plastic, but that seems to cast relatively well compared to some of the others. There's not much more I really have to say about it, but I've really been pleased with the Spartacus II as a beginner reel, as a reel to kind of learn the art of bait casting on. And like I said, I do get backlashes. I backlash this reel, I won't say frequently, but most trips I get a couple right, and I think that's pretty typical for a lot of people. In almost every instance, they haven't been really difficult backlashes to get out. They're not like the really huge ones where your entire spool line is a rat's nest or something like that, where you really can't do it. Most of the time you just have to keep, just pull that line out. That's all you got to do to get it out. I use 15-pound P-line copolymer. It's a top water formulated line on this reel, and that's been a good line, I think, to sort of start off with, at least when you're getting used to it. You're just it's sort of similar to a monofilament because it floats, but it has a little more sensitivity, a little less stretch than mono. So I've been pleased with that line. Overall, this reel is quite a good value for the price, if you ask me. It's a small reel. I don't have particularly big hands, but I can pretty comfortably get a good grip on it when I'm retrieving with this reel. So no issues there. Quite small, really. Pretty small reel. I think this is kind of fall into that category of ultra low profile reels too. Look how flat the top of this reel is, and the line guide, this space above the line guide is very, very low. So if you're want a smaller frame reel, don't really like bigger reels where you have small hands, this is a good reel to use. Don't really get too fatigued by it. Definitely less so than with spinning gear. I think that is a little heavier a lot of the time. So yeah, if you're looking into bait casting and want to sort of try your hand at it, I think the KastKing Spartacus II is a very good option for that, for a beginner. Or if you're just you're budget conscious and you don't want to spend a bunch of money on a combo or on a reel, and you're looking for something that's going to perform well in a lower price point, also a good option. I fished with this for a year, not like every time I go, but quite a few times, and it still functions well. I mean, I will say it's probably not as quiet as it was when I first got it. You can still hear that whining sound when you run the handles there. And there have been some times when this reel has kind of made some some squealing or squawking sounds on the cast, as your spool is sending the line out there. And that's as simple. In my experience, all you have to do there is take the spool out, put a little bit of oil in there, a very light amount of oil, and that resolves pretty much with just a little lubrication like that. So with a little bit of maintenance, this reel can be fairly smooth and quiet. Anyway, I know this is a different video, but I hope you enjoyed this. I definitely recommend the Spartacus II casting reel. Yeah, I just took the line off, and I'm going to kind of get it cleaned up a little bit. This blue does kind of show up sort of pond scum and dirt a bit more than like a black reel would, so I'm gonna clean it up a little bit. But anyway, I know this is a different type of video, kind of more for the nerds and the gearheads out there. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video about the KastKing Spartacus II casting reel. Thanks for watching, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We've got weekly fishing content popping off at Cross Country Bank Angler. Take it easy.